I'm your host today, Dalane, England. Liberty Moms are the original secretaries of defense. We are the real original defenders of the home front. We are there when it comes to defending our families and our communities. We're so happy to have you join us today at KMMU, and we are really delighted. We have a great show. I am super happy to have a great Liberty Mom, Chris Kimball, as my first guest, and then we will also be having Liberty Dad, Representative Phil Lyman on. He will be joining us. We are in the middle of we're almost the end, the last 2 days of the legislative session, and he's going to try to slip away, which is always very difficult to get away in this environment. Things are just crazy. It's super busy, lots to do, but hopefully he will be able to slip away and join us. But we are just thrilled to have Chris Kimball. She's been such a good sport. Chris, she's a total Liberty Mom. She is the former chair of the Davis County Republican Party. She's also on the state central committee numerous times, and Chris, you've also been an elector for our state.
Presidential elector, yes, which is very
awesome.
Yeah, there's only 6 that can happen every 4 years. And so it's something that isn't very common. And anyway, so that was a great honor to be able to serve in that capacity.
That really is. That's such a great honor. And I'm sorry, we can't get Chris's video to work. And she's very beautiful. But I'm kind of glad because I don't like to have my face right up against Chris's face.
You're too kind, Dalane.
We are going to, I'm just a truthful person. You know, I'm all about honesty. That is my mantra. Let's tell the truth, even when it hurts. We are going to be talking about legislation. There are a lot of bills that are actually, you know what? It's been a pretty good session because I was talking to Marianne Christensen, who's also a Liberty Mom, and we were kind of mentioning last night, there's actually more good bills that got passed this year than bad bills that we have been working on. So it actually feels quite good. So it's kind of a happier session. We would love to take calls. Our number is 385-899-2134. So I will repeat that because if you don't have a pen handy, it's not one of those numbers that's easy to memorize. It's taking me some time personally. So get your pen and pencil handy and I will repeat the number. Okay. Before we start talking about legislation, Chris, I'd really like to talk about vetting candidates. It's election season. It's a time when we will be going to our caucus meeting Tuesday, March 5th. And I hope that everyone decides that this is where you want your vote to count. This is where your vote counts. Everyone has a chance to hear have their voice heard and to vote on who you want to represent you. This is the beauty of the Republic. It's so amazing that we have a chance to have our voices heard and go decide who we want who really truly represents us and represents our views. And the caucus convention system is incredible that way. And so I hope that you will plan to attend. And if you can't attend, you can always send your ballot via someone who is attending. Every person can take up to 3. And so it is an important process that we have. And when you go and you might run to be a delegate or you're going to elect delegates. But I thought it would be really helpful for most people. We could discuss some of the questions that you can ask in vetting a candidate, and especially for candidates, delegates or citizens to ask candidates, to ask people who are running for office who want to represent us and find out where they stand. Because what I have noticed, and Chris, you tell me if you have noticed this, almost every candidate, I can't think of one who doesn't say they're a conservative Republican. Have you found any candidates, no matter how liberal they are?
That has been the most co-opted phrase of everyone in the Republican Party, no matter if you're on the extreme right, being a true conservative, or if you are center left of the Republican Party, center towards more left, you think you're a conservative, or that's what they claim to be.
What does it mean if you're a conservative? What does conservative mean? Because look at your
I know,
voting
'cause
record. I would not consider it conservative. So,
I know it's like I have to find a new label for me. Like if they're conservative, then I've got to find something else that describes me because that is not conservative.
well, I have the label for you because it's a label for me. I do not call myself a conservative because of that reason. I call myself a constitutionalist. And that is what you are, Chris. And
Okay.
it isn't a matter of being, I like what um, some have said, and I want to give them credit. Um, Possibly Enoch Moore. I want to give credit to the right person, either Ben McClintock or Enoch Moore, both of them. It's not about right or left, it's about right or wrong. And really, the Constitution is right in the middle. The Constitution really is what we should all be striving to align with, regardless of what party or no party. If we're aligned with the Constitution, that's where we're going to have success.
Right. And when you say in the middle, it's in the middle in between the far left, which is tyranny and
Yes.
dictatorship and control, mandate. Think the word mandate. When you hear the word mandate, that's somebody who's trying to control you. And
Yes.
then the
Not
other side of the
themselves.
spectrum
You.
is anarchy, which is not enforcing the rule of law. Government isn't doing their job to protect the citizens. There is no, it's our open border. That would be anarchy. There's anarchy at the southern border because the federal government is choosing to ignore the rule of law to enforce the laws. And then locally, we can think about COVID. COVID was the opposite end of on the scale, and it was the tyranny. When government forced, our governor and through the bureaucracies in the state of Utah, they forced citizens to shut down their businesses, to not be able to see their loved ones, to keep their kids home from school. It was horrible. So we've experienced both sides of that spectrum.
We have, and we have absolutely experienced total tyranny. And really, the founders didn't even put it right in the middle. It's more a leaning towards liberty. But you don't want to be so close to liberty that there's anarchy. Anybody can do what they want to. And yes, thank you so much, because we've experienced both of those, where people are not, they're not using the rule of law, except on some people. But they're just not the people that are in positions of power. Many of our judges, and including the person who's in the White House, they're just ignoring the rule of law and their responsibility and their oath. So this is, if I just really like, if we just need to get back to the Constitution. That really is the way to solve the problems of America, is to go back to the Constitution. If we think about it, America became the most free and the most prosperous nation in the world because of the Constitution. That 2,000-year leap. When we had the Constitution, people had a moral foundation. We understood that we had rights to do what we ought to do rather than what we want to do. We understood that as a nation, and it really brought us so much true freedom and true
And
prosperity.
and I would add that it was actually a 5,000-year leap and not
Yes.
a 2,000-year leap.
Thank you, Chris.
Or we would be really amazing.
You're so right. I didn't even notice I made that slip, but yes, it was a 5,000-year leap.
Hey, I can give you some slack because you know what? You've been up there I think every day during this session, so you have lost a few brain cells. And
I
I
can't even
bless
tell you
you.
how tired I am. I cannot tell you. It's so
Yes.
exhausting.
And I bless you for being up there. So I just kid you with love and
True.
respect, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, I like to be kept in line. Like, that's what true friends do. We keep each other telling the truth and keeping it accurate. So, okay, I will repeat our call-in line, 385-899-2134. Okay, let's talk about some questions. My favorite question to start, not that I get the best answers from it, but my favorite question that I always start is, what do you think is the proper role of government? And it's so fascinating to hear answers. I mean, mostly I get, I've never even thought about it before.
Yeah.
I want to represent you in the government, but I don't know what the proper role of the government is.
Yes. So Dalane, are we focusing on candidates or delegates on Monday night, or or both, or
Well, I think maybe what we'll do right now first, Chris, while you're here, why don't we first focus on delegates? Let's
okay.
focus on what delegates do, what they need to do, and how we determine the best delegates.
Okay. Well, I think that okay. So what's unique about this particular caucus this year is we have included the presidential primary. Now, our primary in Utah is normally this last Tuesday of June. Okay, but if we decide to hold the president on the last day of June, then we have totally missed the whole presidential. Uh, what do I want to say? The whole
The
we
race,
lose
basically, our vote, and our voice. So it's
well, we
mute,
lose
guys.
we're not a player in the process, is what I
Right.
mean to say. And so, what we've chosen to do, the Republican Party in Utah, is move up the presidential primary and have it part of the caucus, because now we are part of Super Tuesday, which is going to happen next Tuesday on the 5th. And we're one of maybe 8 states, I believe, that are doing their primaries. And so we'll be putting forward, we call it a presidential preference, because it's not really a primary. Our primary is June 25th, I believe. So it's a
Right.
presidential preference, but this is where you come and show up and vote for the candidate that you want to represent us as president of the United States in the Republican Party. So it's a very big night for Republicans to come forward, just as Dalane talked about earlier. Okay, it's the grassroots and all that, but you're also voting and having your voice heard for the office of President of the United States. And so I feel like we really just have 2 candidates, because the third one dropped out, I believe, yesterday. And I can't remember his name, and it's good he dropped
Right.
out, because
Yeah.
he was not ever gonna. He was a wealthy billionaire and just thought he could buy his way to the presidency. But and some people feel like they can do that even here in Utah. But
No, and it does work in
you
Utah. It
you
works
have
locally.
2 candidates, I think, that really are very telling at this moment. So I think just asking the person running to be delegate who they prefer to be president will really shed a lot of light about their values and their principles.
That is
Okay.
a really good point. Yeah, because
Yeah,
that kind of tells you everything.
it does,
I mean,
because
not
you have
everything, but it tells you a lot.
it tells you a lot, because you have a candidate that is very pro uh, uh, pro military, pro war. I shouldn't say military, but pro um, policing the world. They want the United
Yes.
States to police the world. That would be, she has a little nickname, Neocon, but that would be Nikki Haley. Neocon Nikki is how her friends, her dear ones, refer to her. And then, of course, the other one is Donald Trump. Okay. And again, we've experienced 4 years with Donald Trump, and I'll tell you, I travel a lot around the world, and I was a lot safer with my overseas travel when he was president than I am
Boy,
today.
you know what, Chris? That is such a huge point,
Hmm.
because it is so different traveling overseas now than it was when President Trump was in office. It's a totally different game, completely. My son's
And
in Spain right now, and I've never worried about it at all. But right now, I'm just like, I can't wait till he
oh,
gets home. I want to know he's on this soil of this country.
it exactly. And when our former president Obama was president, we had a Utahn that had been wrongfully
Yes.
accused of being a terrorist down in Venezuela and was in jail, in prison for, I believe, almost 2 years. And it
Yes.
wasn't until Trump became president
Mhm.
that he was able to get released.
Yes, he was able to negotiate a release. Otherwise, he'd probably still be there,
He would still be there because our
yeah,
current administration would just leave him high and dry. And
and
so,
is leaving other people around the world that are in prison high and
yeah,
dry. They're
yeah.
not freeing them.
Yeah. So I think right off the bat, and again, at caucus night, you don't have lots of time, but I think
Not
asking
at
them
all.
who they prefer for president is a really golden question.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you'll get a good vibe as to where they are on other things just by answering that. Okay.
Yes,
So
because
that would
that
be one.
question answers like, do you want to spend more money on foreign wars? How
Right.
much do you want to be engaged in wars in other countries?
Yeah. And do you like your tax dollars going to other countries that have no accountability for where that money is spent? That we're just,
Exactly. And we're
are
not
we,
asking for any accountability. We're not getting any, we don't know. And then they're saying, send us more money. And we actually are getting proof of where that money's going. And it isn't going to the war, it's going to
and
people.
Delane, last time I checked, we have quite a bit of debt. I
I
mean,
checked
I don't know,
yesterday.
in your household when you're trying to budget and if you're a little bit behind, do you start giving your money away to your neighbors without any accountability as to, or do you try to take care of your family first?
I really like to be generous, but if I have any debt at all, I do not like being into debt. But if I have debt, it is not my first responsibility is to get my family out of debt, get us
Right.
on stable ground. I can't be super generous saving others and putting them in my lifeboat until the lifeboat sinks. And the scriptures are really clear about this. The Lord's like, if your heart is full and you want to do for others, but you're not in a position, that is purity. That is a pure heart to the Lord. But He helps us get on a stable foundation first. So, first, we get our lives in order so that we're in a stable place where we can lift someone else. So, yeah, over $34 trillion in debt, more than $1 trillion a year or maybe a month. I can't remember now, but our debt payment is over $1 trillion. At the rate we're going, we can't ever get out without cutting our spending. The only way to ever reverse things is to stop spending on unconstitutional spending.
Yes.
No
And
way.
and Delane, seriously, there is nothing that is prohibiting all of these wealthy people who are feeling like our tax dollars need to go over there. There's nothing prohibiting them from sending money to Ukraine,
Not at
right?
all. Go
Yeah.
for it. I'm all over
Spending
it.
their money. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you really are in, if you've got the means, then you can go for it. You don't need the government to be the messenger. They don't have
The
to be Western
enforcer,
Union. You can send
the,
it yourself,
the
right?
collector. Yeah. And that kind of tells you a lot, Chris. It's like, if this is important to you, why aren't you already doing it? And we know with like Mercury 1, we know that when people were stuck in Israel, that who went and they didn't wait for the government. They didn't wait. They just said, we need to go help. And they went and got people out. And that tells you a lot of the citizens they don't even have to be wealthy. They just maybe had connections or knew how to do it. And they were able to raise money and be able to go get people and bring them home. So yes, that's such a good point, Chris. That's a very, very good point.
Okay, another question that actually this was someone from our United Women's Forum, Pat Jones. I have to give her the credit for this. But she was vetting. She's busy. We're busy starting to vet candidates right now. But another question you could ask the people, running, if you want to, is who do you think should have the ability to decide who is our Attorney General? Should that go to the governor or to the voice of the people?
That is an excellent question because that is up. That is up right now. And then we've got
Exactly.
another question.
Yes, it is up,
That's what, yeah.
and it's very clear that if that is somebody, we have a candidate in Salt Lake County who answered it incorrectly because she felt like we should give more power to the governor and create more of a tyranny sort of, well, maybe not a tyranny, but more of a monarchy where he does everything for us, right?
Mhm.
He's going to he'll take care of our attorney general. He's taking care of our elections right now through his lieutenant governor. So let's give him more power to be that monarchy, right?
Yes. That central, I mean, if you just think about it, it's such an important principle. Again, it's in the scriptures, the centralization of power. When did that ever end up being good for us? When was that ever a positive thing? Centralization of power is how you get corruption. It's how you get a dictatorship or a monarchy. It is how you lose your freedoms. We never want to centralize power. I can't think of one instance that was a good thing. And I want to give another really awesome question along with who should decide who our AG is
elected
how.
that they are represented. The governor again appoint the school board. See, that's another good
Yes.
question, right?
Yeah, and that is also up right now. That is an idea, a bill that has been presented is that the governor should appoint school board members rather than having them elected. I can't imagine. And it is frustrating on the state school board because we have 15 across the state. Most people don't know who theirs is and they don't know how to that, but that is something that can be overcome with education and people getting involved, and people are getting more involved. So that's a great question. I want to just pause for a moment here that we are brought to you by KMMU, Main Street Media of Utah. We're live on Rumble, we're on X or Twitter, we're on YouTube, and our website is kmmu.org. And you can search your favorite platform, or you can go to kmmu.org and hit the listen live button. And we invite you to invite your friends, and we love to have more listeners. And we are also very happy to take calls, 385-899-2134. Okay, another one that's up right now that goes right along with what you're saying, Chris, is should we continue to have our lieutenant governor elected with the governor? Because you don't really elect them separately, but should we elect the lieutenant governor and they're on the ballot and they are over elections, including their own election? Is there a conflict of interest where the person over elections is over their own election? A lot of states, and I can't really say most because I don't really know how many, but I know many states have a secretary of state that does elections. Now, we can still elect them, and this is how I would propose. The lieutenant governor is over the election only for the secretary of state. The secretary of state would be over all other elections. So the elections are taken care of by the secretary of state, but when the secretary of state is on the ballot, that one election is handled by the lieutenant governor. Again, checks and balances, separation of power, division of that power, very important power, because if you don't have valid and honest and honorable elections, you can never have a free country. Can't work.
Absolutely right.
No one's going to provide a free country for you that you don't get to elect. I mean, it could happen, but it won't.
There was a bill that was brought forward this year to
Yes.
separate the lieutenant governor from the elections. And then for some reason, I don't know why, but Governor Cox, who's running for office and who oversees through his lieutenant governor the elections, for some reason, he said this year wasn't a good year for that to happen.
Right.
And so
Right.
it made me kind of question, why was this year not a good year? I mean, I know he's busy running for office and he may be concerned about the election, but I'm sorry, but of all the years to have this come forward, and then the governor steps in, who is his office through the lieutenant governor is over elections, that really stinks to high heaven.
Yeah, that's most unfortunate because we did have a bill, we had a sponsor, and it would have been nice to brought this bill forward and have this bill go forward. And this is what I find really sad. First of all, it's fine. The governor has freedom of speech and he can weigh in, but I'm sad that the legislature allowed his voice to be heard, because the legislature and the governor, the executive branch, should have some tension. It doesn't need to be a war, but there should be tension between the executive branch and the legislative branch. They don't have to be holding hands and singing Kumbaya. There needs to be it's designed to have that check and balance. And again, if the executive branch is running the legislative branch, you don't really have a separation of powers. And I love Isaiah 33:22. It tells us where these three division of powers are: the lawmaker, the king, and the judge. That is where that separation of powers of philosophy or theology is right out of the Bible. So that's such a good point, Chris. Thank you so much for making that. And those are all good things. And those are things that we can fix. Those are things that we as citizens can lobby our legislators and again bring this bill back next year and get it on in the legislature and get it going through the system. I would assume that it would require a constitutional amendment, and so
Right.
that would probably happen, which is a really good reason to have it on this year, in my opinion. But so it's not a fast and easy fix, but it is a doable fix. It is absolutely something that we can do.
Right.
I think another question that we could ask is, I think that people don't take the oath of office very seriously. They don't even realize they're going to take an oath of office, but everyone that is elected, every single person from the president down to any office, city council member, anything, they are going to required to take an oath of office to the Constitution of the United States as well as the state constitution. So do you think that it would be really helpful when taking that oath? Can you uphold an oath if you don't know anything about the Constitution, both the state constitution and the federal constitution?
Well,
I think
in
it's hard.
reality, no, because
Yeah, I don't think you can uphold it if you don't know it. Be pretty lucky to just have it happen. So I think that's
I
a really
agree. No, you
important
can't
question.
affirm something.
Yeah,
Right.
that they don't know. So do they know what that they're going to take it in? Do they know what they're taking an oath to? And are they willing to uphold it? And do they understand what they're taking an oath to uphold the Constitution, not to uphold their own conscience or do the things that they think are right? Because the things that they think are right should be aligned with the Constitution. Is there a time when what is right is not aligned with the Constitution? I can't think of one. I don't know if you can.
Right.
I can't think of
Now,
a time when
now,
those
and
shouldn't be aligned.
if you wanted to take that down to the precinct level on your Tuesday night caucus, you could simply ask the delegates if there's anything in the platform in the Republican Party platform that they don't agree with.
Or
Okay,
have an
'cause if they
issue with. Yes.
right, because then again, they are disclosing you're getting complete disclosure of who they are. If they have, for example, we've had a Republican candidate who supported abortion. That would be Becky Edwards when she ran. Well, she never disclosed that. You had to ask her about that specifically. She was never on her disclosure form. She was never just saying, well, I'm a Republican, except for when I want to make sure babies, you know, women have the ability to kill their baby. Right.
Right.
And so we need to make sure that these Republicans that are running, that they just disclose if they have an issue or they're not in line with part of the platform, because you should know that up front, because then you're feeling secure and confident that they're going to pick the right candidate because they understand the platform and they agree with the platform. So they're going to find the best candidate that agrees with our party platform, and everyone is represented correctly.
And when we hold the delegates to that, we're teaching them as a delegate to ask that of the candidates. And
Right.
then we're able to hold them to that platform because we know that they have been asked that and now they've been vetted in that manner. And so then when they vote, we would expect them to vote according to the platform. And it is in our state party, the Republican Party bylaws, it is in there to read the platform at the caucus meeting. So I know some people find it very laborious. I think it's amazing because I love our platform. And I think it's really, really important to read the platform and to know what, for yourself, do I agree with everything here? Is there anything in here I have an issue with? Know that you agree with it or don't, so you know where you stand. And then you can make sure that the candidates and the delegates align with that. So reading the platform is really important. Make sure when you go to your caucus meeting that they do read the platform. And then I think another really important question to ask is, how would you handle, in a delegate, you want to know what would they have done in a crisis, in the next crisis that we have. How would you handle that? Did you agree with the force that was perpetrated on us, or would you have handled it differently, or do you think that that was handled right? So I think that is a really, again, a really important way to find out how people hold the powers of the government and those people who are in positions of power, and where, again, they think that the proper role of government is, and that's drilling it down there.
And so you're referencing specifically the COVID
I am
period, right?
I'm referencing COVID, but I'm also referencing another pandemic in the future. What would
Yeah,
you do in the future when we have another epidemic or pandemic? What would you do if that arose again? How would you handle it? And,
right.
even more than going back, because I'd like to think that a lot of people who didn't know it before, who in hindsight now have learned, because they might have said, well, yeah, I thought it was a good idea at the time, but now that I've been able to get some perspective, I realize that things were not handled right. And so how would you want to do it going in the future? So I'm more concerned about the future than I am looking backwards, than calling people out for making mistakes behind, but looking, how would you handle it now?
That's a good point.
Okay, another question would be federalism. How do they feel about federalism, and do they understand it? I think a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people don't understand it. I think a lot of people, when they hear federalism, they think, oh, that means centralization of power. It means a very, very powerful federal government. They don't know really what it means. And the caucus system is a great place to do a little educating and stand up. And that's a great question to ask, not only of the delegates, but definitely of the candidates.
well, and it is true because I've even heard, friends and legislators talk about the importance of federalism, but then when it comes into the actual practice and the workings of bills being passed or policies being made, they totally forget federalism and they support the the wrong branch of government doing the overreach. Like they'll support or they defend, the federal government being in our local education here in Utah, for example.
Absolutely. And it's been a fascinating year for that very thing. We have several bills, several excellent bills that talk about federalism, talk about the constitutionality of laws. And we've been able to get most of those, with, I think, one exception, but a lot of those have gone through. We've really had success, and they will vote and they will stand and speak how important it is to have that, keep things local and have that separation of powers and speak on federalism. But then the next vote, they'll vote for something completely unconstitutional and that actually implements um, the lack of our sovereignty, that actually does away with it. And so it is, again, very interesting. Again, I think very much a lot of the answer to this is education. But of course, we have to keep in mind there are people who don't want us to have a republic, who clearly want to implement socialism and even as much as Marxism into our education system, into our politics, even into our churches, into our society for sure. And so we really see a lot of that happening in our schools, being implemented in our schools, and we're not doing as good a job in checking our schools as we need to. Um, okay. Do you have another question, Chris?
Uh, well, I'll tell you, at the caucus itself, you're not going to have lots of time for questions because you've got so many elections that take place between the
Yes,
precinct chair, delegates. So I think we've given them a lot for the caucus night. But yeah, but as far as vetting candidates, um, the best thing that I have found, especially when it's somebody who has held office or is currently holding office, is to look at their past record. Okay, and sometimes
definitely.
that can be a little bit difficult. It's much easier to find the voting record of a sitting legislator or the governor. But if you're looking at school board or county council, things like that, you have to go into their minutes and read how they voted on specific issues. So it's it's harder to get that information, but it's there.
It's
If
a lot
you,
more labor intense. It requires more.
it is.
But what I would ask is when you do it, anyone who does it, this is some really important information that we need to share with each other, because we don't really need to have everyone do it. If we have a few people do it and they share it with others, we can all gain a lot from doing that. So, but you're absolutely right, Chris. It takes more work. But you can go to grassroots.org. You can go to Libertas. You can go to Pro-Life Utah, and they all have report cards. You can go to Eagle Forum. So there's all these organizations that have report cards that you can find the voting record of legislators, and even the governor is doesn't really have a voting record, but it's not terribly difficult to find the stand. The governor does veto or pass laws into place. So, or I should say sign past laws into existence. So I do think one more question that I think is super important to ask the delegates at the caucus is, where do you stand on the caucus system, and where do you stand on repealing SB 54? Nobody wants to have their bill SB 54. Nobody wants, that's like a legendary. And so everyone knows what SB 54 is. And if they don't, we can educate them. But I do think that that's a really important question to ask at caucus meeting, because that's a good place for people to understand the value of the caucus. Great place to educate people. So I would include that as a really important question at caucus. Okay, we lost Chris. I don't know if she had to leave, which I know she did have a meeting soon. If we did not, if Chris can come back, we'll bring her back on if she is able to join us again. If not, we hope that Representative Lyman will be able to join us. And I do understand it is an extremely busy time. Yeah, Chris just texted me. She will not be able to join us. And we really appreciate Chris so much. I just want to publicly say thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. We really appreciate it. She's been such a great power for good on the front lines of fighting for our freedom and our republic. Okay, so we're going to discuss really quickly. I want to discuss some of the bills that are that are in the legislature right now. And I'm going to kind of start with some that haven't actually gone all the way through. And this is where I would love you to get your pen and pencil out, because I would love you to join forces, and I can help you if you want to get involved and want to do something, weigh in on your perspective and let legislators know how you want them to vote. One bill that I think is really important, and it really hasn't gotten a lot of attention, and I really hope that it's made it through the House and it's made it through the Senate committee, and now it's on the Senate floor, but it's not on the reading calendars, and I'm hoping that it will be, because I really want this bill to pass. I think it's super important. It's HB 316, and it's inmates. I think it's called inmate amendments, and it's a very simple bill, but a very important one. I'm not planning on going to prison or jail. I hope I don't, but if I ever did, but I am concerned about every woman who is in prison or whoever will go to jail or prison, because even though they have maybe committed a crime and they're in the process of reforming their life, this bill says that no biological men can go into a women's prison. No biological women can go into men's prisons. And I think that is really important, as we've seen our culture and our society really corrupt itself and allowed itself to be corrupted, and say that the emperor is wearing beautiful new clothes when everyone can clearly knows the emperor is naked. The emperor has no clothes. You can't change your sex. And while I want to be nothing but absolutely full of compassion with anyone who's suffering from gender dysphoria, these are real life people who have sincere belief systems and feelings, and those feelings, I care about them, but we can't change reality because of how someone feels. But we can help people who are suffering from those things recover and help them heal. That is something we've been very successful at doing. And I'm not saying 100%, but someone who wants to overcome that dysphoria, absolutely can overcome it, and we can help them, but we don't help them overcome it by reinforcing something that's not true. And I think in society, we owe it to people to tell the truth and to stand for truth and to reinforce what is true. And also we owe it to every woman in prison or in jail to not have access to a man to rape them, to badger them, to be, I mean, it can be beaten there. It's just as horrifying to think that you're in a confined area where you can't escape and can't get away, and that you can be allowed for a man to be in there locked in with you and to be able to rape you. And I certainly, I feel like I've misspoken here. I certainly wouldn't want anyone to think that because someone's transgendered that they are rapists of women, because I don't think that for a nanosecond. But someone could pretend to be transgender and get into a prison. And someone who is suffering from gender dysphoria may, um, may fall in that category, of course. But I certainly wouldn't want to suggest that because someone is suffering from gender dysphoria or think they have transgendered, that they are, that kind of a person, violent or that sick where they would rape somebody. So I'm not implying that. I'm just saying that we draw that line very clearly, and then that risk is never allowed to happen to a girl or a woman. So that's HB 316. Anybody that wants to let your senators know, we love that bill. It's an important bill. Please support it when it does come up. Feel free. I would love that because I hope it passes. Another bill that just passed yesterday is HB 348. It is the precious metals bill, and that bill it's such an awesome bill. It did get watered down. It got turned into a study, but I can understand that we do need to lay an infrastructure and do some research. But I don't think we have a year. I hope we do, but I'm not sure we have a year to get this done. We might need to call a special session, but we have an excellent treasurer. Our state treasurer is Marlo Oakes, and this would allow the treasurer to put 10% of the rainy day fund into precious metals, and specifically gold, but into precious metals. And I just think that would be so amazing and how great for our state. And it also allows a study to be done. Like, how would we do this? It's designed to make gold transactional so that, of course, gold is legal tender. We can buy and sell things with gold. We can legally do that now, but no one does it because we don't really have it user friendly. We don't have it in a form that is user friendly. We do a little bit. We have the gold backs. There's probably other companies, but we're not doing it. And this would just make it easier and make it transactional so that a bank can take it and businesses would know how to take it, and you can buy things and sell things, and it would be like normal and ordinary, and people would start to do it. And that is the very best way that we as a state can hedge against inflation, if we will start to incorporate gold into our economy, and especially in the treasurer's office, especially into our state government, where our money would be backed up with literally precious metals. That's a game changer. I am really excited for that. I think that would just be so amazing. So this bill has passed. It's on the governor's desk. So support the governor in signing it, and then I would really hope that we would support this in being more than a study and really going farther with it, and really make sure that this is expanded and broadened next year. And just let your legislators know you love this, you're excited if they supported it, and we want to go farther with this. Another bill that I really like is SB 61, and this one I believe has passed. I will try to check that out. This one is that vaping, it takes the flavors away out so that you can't have flavors in vaping in the state of Utah. The reason why, we're really not trying to control adults with this, but here's the deal. Vaping, what value does it create? Honestly, do addictions create value? Do entities that they call themselves a business, their entire platform of a business to make money is at the expense of their own consumer, their own customers. They are getting their customers addicted to something that is very bad, damaging to their brain, damaging to their bodies, very damaging to their health. And it might create momentary pleasure for them, but it is deadly. It is very damaging. And the flavoring in the vaping was very much designed to target children. And as you well know, vaping, the worst part about vaping is that the best part and the worst part is that it can't be detected. You can't detect it, like you can't really smell it. Kids are vaping in their own homes because their parents can't smell it. So they're doing it at school. They can do it, in the parking lot, or which they always have, in their car. They can do it even when the teacher's not looking in some classrooms, because it's so hard to detect the odor. And so when the flavors make it really enjoyable, make it really enticing to kids. And we know when people get addicted to something as a child, when their brain is not developed, so much harder to overcome, so much easier to get addicted the first time once. So that is a really, really important thing that we need to protect our children from. I would love to have your calls. Feel free to call in 385-899-2134. Feel free to call in. We would love to. I would be really happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'd love to talk about the bills that are in front of the legislature right now, but I am very happy to also talk about whatever's on your mind. Another bill that I really need help on is SB 73. It's the food security bill. We would love to have you weigh in and your input on this. This is passed the Senate and it's passed the House committee. And so it has one vote left, and that is the vote of the House. So every House member will have hopefully the opportunity to vote on this bill, SB 73, food security. Do you think that the growth, production, and the selling transaction of food of Utah, any food that is produced in Utah or manufactured and then sold in Utah, is protected from the Commerce Clause? The federal government cannot weigh in. Not saying they don't, but that's how the Constitution is set up. And we want to protect this food supply from unelected, unaccountable government entities or any other entities from stopping or intervening on our food production. Now, if we have another pandemic or an epidemic, we don't want people getting sick off of food. Of course we don't. And of course, there are measures for that. We have the health department, we have the Department of Ag, but they can weigh in on making sure they have their normal duties on making sure that food is clean, that there are standards, that it's being handled properly. This bill does not impose or infringe on any of that at all, which is wonderful, but it would not allow the unelected agencies to stop the food production without oversight. And it would include the executive branch as well. That the oversight will be handled by the legislative branch. So before an entire herd, one cow gets sick and they want to slaughter the entire herd, like that's what happened in COVID, they just went in and decimated the entire herd because one or two cows got sick. And that is something that should be taken to the elected branch of the legislature. They should weigh in and say, at what point do we decide that the entire herd needs to be killed? Or should we just put them in quarantine and then check them and make sure before wiping them out? You have 3 chickens that get sick. They decimated all of the chickens. And so you can tell I'm not much of a farmer, can you? Not a very good rancher. But we don't want to decimate the entire thing because for everyone, for the sake of the farmer and the rancher. That completely can put them out of business. A lot of them can never recover from that. And they haven't recovered. I don't know a farmer or rancher that has recovered from the devastation of COVID. And so we don't want unelected, unaccountable people making these decisions. We want the elected, which is why we have representative government. And so that is a great bill. And as I said, Every House member needs to hear from they need to hear from you, their constituents. Please support the bill, SB 73. Another really important bill, I love this bill, is HB 290, and it's ranked choice voting. I am not a fan of ranked choice voting, and let me tell you why, because I'm hoping that you would ask, but if you don't ask, you're entitled to my opinion anyway, so I'm going to give it to you. It sounds really nice. Ranked choice voting is precise. You know what? It takes all the contention out of the elections. It makes it so there's not the contention, because what people do when they run with ranked choice voting, they stop asking for the first choice vote. They say, hey, you know what? Just give me your second place vote. They literally run to get the second place vote. Why would they do that? Because the first place vote getters hardly ever win. It's the second place who ends up taking the election and become elected, because the first place doesn't have 50 plus one, but the second place person kind of plays in the middle, and a lot of the same people will vote second, regardless of the mentality. A lot of times more than 50% of the people will have the same person for second place, so that is who will end up winning. And that's not what we want. We want to have the first place person who gets the first place. Then if they don't get 50 plus one, you run another round. Now, people think that that takes more time, but I'm here to tell you, I will promise you, as a person who has counted the votes numerous times, who's counted ranked choice voting ballots, it is so convoluted. It is so complicated. I know of no time when we've counted twice and ended up getting the same result. Usually it's not enough to change the election, but it isn't accurate. It's very hard to get right. The other reason is it changes the outcome of the election. You don't have the same person winning. I think that's a really big deal. Elections are important. Without proper ballot elections, we don't have freedom. So I am willing to guard our elections very jealously and without exception. We need to guard the elections. We cannot allow any space for there to be error or misrepresentation. Another reason, as I said, it's convoluted and complicated. People who go to vote, they get really confused, and they've done surveys on this for the last 4 years. They did survey and asked people in the cities and counties who were using ranked choice voting, and there was a very high propensity to confusion. They said, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm very confused. Well, we want elections to be clean and clear and understandable. One vote, one person. That's how elections are supposed to be. To do that, everybody gets to vote for the candidate of their choice. If not, one person gets 50 plus one, you eliminate the bottom vote getters who didn't get very many, and you run the second round. And sometimes you have to run a third round, depending on how many people are in the election. But you know what? You can count those votes so quickly. You just put them in the stacks. You can count them. You can verify them. You count them 3 times and so fast, and you know you have it right. And then you go, okay, these are the top 2 or 3 winners. Now we're going to put it out again, and we're going to have you vote one more time and see who wins. And then you know the elections are accurate and clean. And so those are some of the big problems with ranked choice voting. We have the science, we have the data, we've tried it. It's a pilot program. It's supposed to go another couple of elections, I think 1 or 2 more elections. But why do something when you know that you have the data back and you know that it's flawed? Why would you continue to do it? We do this in every other profession, every business. Once you get the data back and you know this model's not working, you're going, but we said we were going to try it. And it doesn't work, you're going to try it longer. You're like, let's put the kibosh on that. Let's do a system that we know has worked for thousands of years and proven to be amazing. So that is what this bill does. It ends the pilot program and does away with ranked choice voting in all cities and communities. Now, it's only been done in counties and cities, but there are a few mayors that are saying, oh, you know what, let us choose. And we don't really like the heavy hand of the state, but why would we allow mayors or counties to choose a system that we know is a flawed system, that gives a different result, that is very difficult to audit, that confuses people? And another thing that we know from this is it actually decreased voter participation. Because voters were confused, more voters decided not to participate. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So there's no reason to continue on with ranked choice voting. So this bill on the floor of the Senate, please support senators in voting for HB 290 to end ranked choice voting. All right, another bill that I absolutely love is HB 269. This is Representative Mike Peterson, who is the sponsor of this bill, and I absolutely love this bill. It's amazing. And it just says, now it's not like it's against the law now, but a lot of teachers don't know what is in the law now. Because how many of us do? How many of us go, let's read Utah code and see what's in the law? I mean, we just don't. We're busy living our lives, and we're busy up there at the legislature imposing new laws or trying to stop new laws. But this bill, HB 269, is reinserting that we teach our founding documents in the classroom. And the founding documents, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and this bill actually includes the Magna Carta. And I love that. And it's not because my last name is England either. The Magna Carta was the first document that really said we want to live free. We want to govern ourselves. It told the king, it's like, King, we love you. We want you to be our king, but we want to govern ourselves. And here's the deal. The people of Runnymede in England captured the king, said, we still want you to be our king, but you can agree to this. You can sign the Magna Carta and agree to this, or we're going to behead you. And what we're asking is you get to stay being our king, but we're going to govern ourselves. These are your powers. All other powers are ours. You can do these powers, and everything else we're going to do. Now, what do you think the king said? He's like, well, I either get to die or else I get to let my people govern themselves, and I still get to be their king, and I have some defined and limited powers. I'll take it. So he agreed to it. He signed it. Yeah, and sadly, he didn't keep his agreement. He'd end up getting beheaded. But the mentality of governing ourselves really started in the great nation of England. And those are the people, that mentality are rubbed off on and was instituted in the Pilgrims who came to America and founded this idea of governing ourselves and freedom of worship, worshiping as we like. And so this is a really great bill. It just says that needs to be part of our curriculum, and lets teachers know you can teach these principles in school. Of course, teachers can teach it, but it lays it out so they feel like they know better. Add the Constitution in, add the Declaration in, add the Bill of Rights, add the Magna Carta into your curriculum. And I really like it. That is a bill that has passed the House and is in the Senate. So you can contact your senator and even a few more and let them know that we really want to have that bill and to please pass it. Okay. Another bill that I think is really important is HB 405. Before we get into that bill, I'm going to give you the phone number one more time, 385-899-2134. And I know when people give the number out, they say it so fast, nobody can ever write it down. So I'm going to say it again slower, 385-899-2134. 2134. So feel free to call in. Okay. HB 405 is public health. I love this bill. This is a really great bill. During COVID, we passed a bill saying that your employer nor the government could force you to do something, to insert something into your body that you felt violated your conscience or your religious beliefs. We have never allowed the government or our employer to force us to violate our own conscience. That has really not been an issue. But during COVID, many people did. They allowed their employer against their better, well, they either quit their job or they did something that they felt they personally found was a violation of their conscience. So this isn't a matter of whether you believe in vaccines or don't believe in vaccines. That's not the issue. The issue is, do you think that the government or your employer should force you against your will to get a vaccine or to ingest something into your body that violates your conscience? Because it could be because it goes into your veins. It could be because you don't feel like it was had the right studies and vetted very well. It could be because it has unborn embryos in it, and so you feel like that's a violation of your conscience to put an experiment that includes unborn embryos, which are always unborn, but to put embryos into your body and use it experimentally. So that is, again, that is on the Senate floor, and we just have one more vote. We just need the Senate to vote on that and approve it. And well, I forgot to tell you what the bill does, so excuse me. So we passed that bill last year, but we had to carve out nurses, and certain medical professionals got carved out of that because the medical industry said, no, it's too dangerous. The nurses need to be sure, and everyone going into the hospital needs to know the nurses have been vaccinated. So the nurses either had to get vaccinated or they had to quit their job. So what this bill does is it gives nurses the same protection and the same rights to their freedom of conscience as every other person in the state. So that's all it does, is it takes that carve out and it puts it into the bill. So in my opinion, it's a great bill, and I hope you will support it. Okay, there's a bill, HB 514. This is a really interesting bill. It was in committee. It was in Senate committee. I think it was, I guess it was the day before yesterday. And I was in there, and it was really interesting to hear the testimony on this bill. This bill is just allows a chaplain to go in as a volunteer, to go in to the schools and to have school chaplains. This is not unheard of. This is not something that is new. It's kind of really old. It's really reintroducing this, bringing it back. We wonder, why do we have so much anxiety in children? Why are they suffering so much suicidology? Why are kids more angry? Why are they more frustrated? Why are they suffering anxiety and depression and more shut down than they have been in past years? Now, of course, COVID did have a lot, the way we handled, it wasn't COVID itself, the way that our country and our state handled COVID did cause a lot of these problems in our young people, for sure. And the isolation was very damaging, very detrimental to the children and to the adults, frankly, for that matter. But it was so interesting to listen to the testimony that was given in committee. And it made it really apparent to me that these people testifying had not actually read the bill. Because what I don't think most of us, I really didn't know. I mean, I knew what chaplains went to school and they had a lot of training. I didn't really know exactly what it was. But this is what's really interesting. It's a really interesting bill and concept. Chaplains are trained to not be specific to a specific religion. And I knew that they were supportive of all religions. They help you, whatever your religion is, they kind of help you and feel good about your faith and your belief and help you institute that. But I didn't realize to what extent chaplains are trained to not go with a specific religion. They're very, very well trained on that and very well versed on it, which I think is really important to having a chaplain in the schools. We don't want to have a Catholic chaplain or an LDS chaplain or a Jewish chaplain go in and be into the public schools and just be, being a missionary for their specific faith or sect. That is not what we want. But we do we not want, let me ask you, do you want your kids or the kids in the school to have someone that they can go talk to, that they can go just share with and lean on and have a shoulder to cry on, who believes in faith, who believes in a higher power, who believes in God, in the Creator? Even if this child or student does not believe in Jesus Christ. And many chaplains do not. That is not a requisite of being a chaplain. There are chaplains who personally don't believe in God, but they help this child or the person seeking assistance in being in touch with what they believe in and helping them just find peace and resolution. This was a very interesting bill, HB 514, Chaplains in Schools. It did pass out, and so it is now on the Senate floor. It is now where the senators, I don't think it is actually showing up on their reading calendar as of yet, the last I checked, but they do have the opportunity will have the opportunity, hopefully, to vote on this bill. And it was really interesting because a lot of chaplains testified against the bill because they got the idea that the volunteers that would go in would be just volunteering as a chaplain and that they wouldn't be legitimate chaplains. But that is not what the bill does. The bill says they have to be a trained chaplain, but they can do it if they want to as a volunteer. And the reason for that is then the schools do not have the expense. So if I was a chaplain and I had kids in school or my neighbors were in school and I felt driven, I could go to a school and just volunteer for and not to be compensated financially, but I think you always receive excellent compensation when you volunteer for good causes, and just go into the school for it. You could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. You could do it 2 times a week, whatever. The volunteers could decide how much they want to go in, but they wouldn't be volunteering just to do it. They would be chaplains, trained chaplains that would volunteer to go into the schools without compensation. So I just can't understand exactly why people think this is such a big problem. And I will tell you that the reason that I think that is because I look at what is going on with our kids. They need truth. They need something that they can believe in. It's really important. Another reason is because if you understand history, which I love history is so fascinating. It's wonderful. I love learning from history. And we've grown up in this world, in America, we're being taught a lie that there is a separation of church and state and that we shouldn't have God in schools. God had to be removed and stripped from schools. But here's what's true. I own a Bible in my possession, and I'm sorry I didn't think to bring it. I should have got it so I could show it to you. I'll try to remember to bring it next week. And it is a Bible that is printed and published by the school system for public schools and libraries. And it is a King James Bible. And it was used until, I don't even know how old, but it was printed in 1960. So it was used after that. We do know. I don't know really when Utah decided to stop using Bibles in school, but in my own lifetime, I know you think I'm old, but I'm really not that old. I'm younger than I look. But in my lifetime, the schools did have Bibles. Definitely in Florida, where my siblings grew up and went to school. They had Bible there all the time. But Florida is a very Bible-loving state. And we definitely had Bibles here in the state of Utah. And so it's not a weird thing to have the Bible in school. It's just we've been taught, trained, and educated that having a Bible in school is a weird thing and that it's inappropriate and not right. We do not want our kids being taught theologically from the Bible, but we do want to taught. Do we not want? Do you not want your children taught these amazing principles of the Bible? Do you not want them taught morality? That you can't be free without a moral compass, without having a morality. And I just want to remind everybody a couple of things. One is that you can't have freedom according to the founders. You can't have freedom without that moral foundation. The Northwest Ordinance, they put right in the Northwest Ordinance, it was required to teach religion, morality, and knowledge in school. Those are the three pillars of education: religion, morality, and knowledge. Well, you can't say that having the Bible or the scriptures in school is unconstitutional when that was part of the Northwest Ordinance. And it was also very much the mantra of our founding fathers. And who printed the Bibles for public education? It was the government. Congress printed the Bibles for public school. That is how it's always been. It was never separated. And just really quickly, and I will actually, on one of my shows, I'm going to talk about where this idea, where the separation of church and state, where that came from and who picked up on it. But that was not in the Constitution. I always tell my students, I take out $100 bill and I say, I got $100 bill. I will give you, the first person gets this $100 bill who can find in the Constitution where it says separation of church and state. And of course, I can not be worried about losing my $100 bill because it doesn't say it anywhere. In fact, on the contrary, it says in Amendment 1 very clearly, Congress shall pass no law restricting the exercise of religion. You can't, the government can't restrict. So we do get to have religion in the public square. And I'm here to say the Supreme Court more than once has ruled that secular humanism is a religion. Do our schools have secular humanism in the schools? Right now, is secular humanism taught in public school? Absolutely 100%. So you already have religion in school. Do you want to counter the religion of secular humanism with Christianity or Judeo-Christianity, because the Bible is both Jewish and Christian? Do you want it tempered or balanced with something besides just secular humanism? We got to bring morality and religion back into the public square. So that is in Supreme Court. That is ruling. And I have another really super important thought that I keep thinking of and then I keep forgetting it. So when it pops back into my mind, I will share it with you. So I would like to share with you a little bit about Dr. Benjamin Rush. Dr. Benjamin Rush is one of my favorite founders. I love him. He was the premier doctor of the colonial time. He was friends with, really, I like to say he was kind of friends with all the founders, but I know that he was very much friends with John Adams. He was friends with Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and friends with Benjamin Franklin. And John Adams, he was interviewed. And just to make clear, I don't know if I said this, Dr. Benjamin Rush, he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and he was very influential. And John Adams was interviewed by several people who were like, after the country was founded and after the Constitution had been invoked and was being used, John Adams was interviewed by several scholars that were, and media people that were writers, journalists, and they were asking him, they said, who do you think are the three most significant founders? And John Adams said, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and guess who else? Because he wasn't going to say himself, right? Because you could easily argue that John Adams was one of the three most influential. But because they were asking John Adams, he was not that kind of person to say himself, he said Dr. Benjamin Rush. So let's say those were kind of four of the most notable. And I don't want to take anything away from the rest of them who were absolutely notable and amazing. But that's just to point, that is how important Dr. Benjamin Rush was to the founding of this country. Dr. Rush was very accomplished, and he was really legendary. He served for 4 decades as in political service to his country. He was a very accomplished doctor. As I said, he is considered the father of American medicine. He helped found many societies, including a society to end slavery, a society to promote science. He actually is not just as supported, but established a society to encourage Sunday schools, to distribute Bibles, including in public school, to provide relief for the insane. He had an idea of how to help the insane so that they would not become just homeless and indigent. And he was very, very concerned about women. He wanted women to have rights and to be treated correctly. He established at least 5 universities. So you can tell he cared about college, about education. He established several colleges and academics. He formulated visionary educational policies. He authored numerous textbooks, and he pioneered educational opportunities for both women and the Black Americans, because the key, an important key to ending slavery, was to educate. You can't just let loose hundreds of thousands of Black people with no jobs, no homes, no way to sustain themselves, and no education. In order for them to be able to be successful and to be able to go out, they needed an education. So he was very, very instrumental in establishing colleges and schools that Black people could attend so that they could get an education, and they could go out and really conquer the world, become entrepreneurs, get jobs, and to be able to provide for their families and be successful. Very important. He was actually called the father of public schools under the Constitution. So remember that. The father of public schools under the Constitution. And in 1791, he penned the following work on the importance of teaching the Bible in schools. So he wrote this book, more of a pamphlet, called Defense of the Use of the Bible in Public Schools. So that I want to talk about that, because I think that's just really important. And because we kind of think that we believe that this separation between church and state that doesn't actually exist, that it was part of the Constitution. And it was nothing more than the Danbury Baptists wrote Thomas Jefferson, because he was very good friends with them, and he actually attended their meetings at times. And they wrote to him when he became president of the United States. They say, how do we know that somebody's not going to declare a United States religion? Because they're like, it won't be us. And we don't want to have a state or a national religion. That very much concerned them. And Thomas Jefferson wrote back in a letter, and he just said, oh no, we've created a very good wall where the government will not run the state, that the government will not run, the government will not run the religions, is what he was really meaning. There's a wall, so the government can't invoke and run the religions, and we don't want the religions to be the government. We don't want a religion to be the government, but we want religions to be free, to be religions, and we want the government to never control religions, and we don't want a specific religion to control the government. So he said, and he used the word, there is a wall of separation between those. And if you read the letter, it makes it somewhat clear, especially if you understand the language of the times, that is exactly what he meant. And that was upheld for decades and decades and decades, more than 150 years. And then scholars in Ivy League universities ran into this letter, and they wanted to get rid of God from the public square and get God out of schools. And they started teaching that this was as if it was part of the Constitution. They started teaching it like, this is what the founders wanted. This is what they meant. This is what they meant by it. So that's kind of how that came. And I'm going to share with you more details about that and the letter, because I think it is really important for people to understand the roots of that and where it came from and what it really means. But that's in a nutshell. So this is going back to the booklet that Dr. Benjamin Rush wrote, The Defense of the Use of Bible in Schools. And he said the Bible as a school book, he preferred it to all other compositions. So he said, before you teach anything else in school, you should be using the Bible. And Dr. Benjamin Rush wasn't the only founder who said that. George Washington definitely said it. John Adams did. Many of them. It was not unusual, but they said, the Bible is the primer. Most people who learn to read from the Bible, whether at home or in school. But he said, oh yeah, we have to include the Bible as the primer. It was his number one preference, as well as many others. And he said, you know what? I'm going to state my arguments for why I think that. And I'm going to give 5 propositions. And these are his 5 propositions. This might be offensive to some people. And I really understand that, because if you're not Christian, this is going to sound offensive. And I'm just sharing with you what Dr. Benjamin Rush said. And you can agree with him or disagree with him. So it's so great about America. This is what I keep forgetting to say. I kept going out of my mind. What is so great about living in a Judeo-Christian nation is that everyone's rights are protected and everyone's beliefs are protected. Everyone gets to have and uphold whatever religion they want to. If you live in a Christian Judeo society or country, you get to have whatever religion you want, and nobody will force that religion onto you. No one. That is what's so great, is that your right to your religion, your right to your conscience is honored, even if it's not wanting to have any faith at all. Okay, my screen caller producer just called me. I've never answered the phone and talked to somebody while I was on air, so that is like a way unusual situation. It is making me wonder if we are even, if we're even online. So I'm going to take a quick break, talk amongst yourselves, and I'm going to just keep it on. So this will be a live conversation with my producer.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm still on. Yes.
Okay. I think things failed for a minute, but I think it's all good. So
Okay.
keep going.
All right. I'll just continue on then. Thank you very
We
much.
lost our internet for just a minute. Thanks.
Okay. That explains it. Because I was like, why are you calling me when you know I'm online? And then I thought maybe I'm not. Okay, great. We'll just continue. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, in case you didn't catch that, the beauty. Oh, this is our guest. Yes, Phil. Hi. It's you can still join us if you want to jump in right now. I emailed you the link. No problem. I understand. Jump on. If you don't have the link, let me know. But I did email it to you. I mailed it to your government, your legislative one. Do you want me to email it somewhere else? So we're on, and we're going, and we're live. So I can bring you on as soon as you jump on. It's video. It's video and audio. Okay, great. I'll bring you right in. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, that was our Representative Phil Lyman. I just love him. So, and as I told you when we started the show, it's very hard to break away. It's very hard. There's a million things, and they have a lunch break between 12 and 2, but they caucus, which means they get together with all the Republicans, and the Dems get together, the Democrats get together, and they talk among themselves like, what's priority? What do we need to do? They get organized, and so it's really important. And then there's a lot of things that you have to do. There's a lot of different things you got to get ready for. If you've got a bill coming up, you want to get the votes, you want to make sure you've got that lined up. So they have a lot of things that they have to do during that break, and they try to eat lunch, and sometimes that doesn't even happen. I know, and it is super busy. They really kind of have to do 3 things at once. So he is going to jump on. I am super excited. We're just really excited to have him. And I am going to try to just, if I can do 2 things at once, resend the link to him so he'll have it handy dandy and can find it really easily. And that way he can join us. We would love that. So carrying on. Okay, so Dr. Benjamin Rush, he said that if you didn't catch that, it was the beauty of living in a Christian nation, because I know we did cut out for a few minutes there. The beauty of living in a Christian nation is that everyone, a Christian, Judeo and Christianity, respect the rights and beliefs of every single person. You live in a country that does not have a Christian Judeo foundation. You will not have that. This is a religion, and you must honor it and respect it. And you can have severe and serious repercussions for not abiding by that faith of the country. And I don't know of any other country that will honor your right to your beliefs, like a Christian Judeo will. If you know of one, call me. I'd love to hear from it because I have done a lot of research on that. Okay, so this is what Benjamin Rushman said. Dr. Benjamin Rush said in his defense of the use of the Bible in schools. Christianity is the only true and perfect religion, and that in proposition as mankind adopt its principles and obey its precepts, they will be wise and happy. You know, I love that. Now, for someone who's not Christian, that could be really, really offensive. It's like, hey, wait a minute, my religion is the best religion, and my religion is true. And I respect that, and I totally love and respect your right to believe that and honor it. And I honor that you believe that. But here is what I want you to think about. That in proposing it, as mankind adopts its principles and obey its precepts, they will be wise and happy. And that, regardless of your religion, I don't think you can deny, because you can look and see that when people obey the doctrines and principles in a Christian Judeo society, in the Bible, the people are wise and they are happy. And that is not up for debate. That is true. Okay, we're super excited to have Representative Phil Lyman join us. Thank you so much, Phil. I know you're super busy, so I didn't know if it would happen, but welcome.
Well, sorry to be so delinquent, but I'm really glad to be on. Thanks, Dalane.
It's really, you know what, it's perfect time. It worked out just great.
Oh, good.
We
Good.
were just actually talking about how important it is to have the principles of the Bible in public school and why it makes a difference, and that how the founders, specifically Dr. Benjamin Rush, talked about the following the precepts will bring you, and its foundations will bring you wisdom and happiness, and it definitely has proven out to be that way. So
Yeah, that's the purpose, right?
yeah, that is. And you don't have to be a Christian to know that it's true, and you don't even have to adhere to Christianity to see that following those principles will bring you happiness, and they're not unlike really any other true religion.
Right.
So Representative Lyman, thanks for joining us. I want to know, you have 1.5 days left. How are you feeling?
It's been a good session. Honestly, it's always hectic. I've told people it's terrifying if they could realize how casually we make laws that affect people's lives dramatically. But that is the process, and it's really haphazard. It's like I say, it's kind of terrifying. But at the end of the day, I feel like things have moved pretty.
Oh dear.
Sorry.
Okay, we just lost you for a second. I'm so glad
Did I
you're
lose
back.
you?
Yeah, and you know what, Phil? You just this morning were on the floor about a bill, and I should have written it down because I thought I'd remember, but I can't remember. But you are so wise because they were proposing a bill. Oh, dang, we lost him, but hopefully he'll get right back in. So a sponsor was proposing a bill, and as they do, and this bill really took power away from the locals and gave power to the state. Now, there are times we want to do that when the state is supporting the freedom of the cities and counties. That's when it's appropriate. If the state is supporting that and protecting the people and the people's rights from the cities and states taking those freedoms away, then the state is doing the right thing. But when the state is usurping power over the cities and counties and taking freedom from the people and the cities and states, then it is inappropriate. And so Phil got up when this, and he just did an excellent job from his most kind and wise way of being. He has the most nice demeanor, and he just reminded the body, is this the proper role of government? Do we want to leave these powers to the people and to the cities and counties, or do we want to usurp power over them by giving it to the state? And so, okay, he's back. Okay, so I was just sharing, sorry we lost you. I was just sharing how you got up and stood and spoke in such wisdom, such eloquence, and in such kindness, because sometimes when we're right, we don't always say it in the nicest way, but you did it with the nicest demeanor. And you know what was sad, Phil? They still voted for it, even though you educated them.
Which bill are you talking about now?
I don't remember the bill, but it was the one where you got up and you said, you know what, I don't want to say the sponsor because if I'm wrong, but it was
Yeah,
representative,
might have been.
and you stood and said, you know, do we want to take power from, do we want to centralize power? Do we want to take it from the cities and counties, or do we want, and I was just,
Yeah, I guess it's a recurring speech that I give because it's a recurring theme up here. So yeah, it could be one of 3 or 4 different topics where I stand up and say, you know, do the counties and the cities not have the ability to do this already? And so we're basically going to force them to do something they have the power to do now. And we get to the point, Lord of the Flies scenario of anything not compulsory is forbidden. And I don't know. It's a dangerous path we're going down to, and it's not in keeping with the Republican form of government or the Constitution. And so, yeah, those things really affect me personally when I see the state taking over authority that really belongs to the people and to the municipalities.
yeah, it is. I don't really like what you said. I like that you brought light to truth when you said we pass bills so casually here that literally they usurp authority and power over people. And we do it. I don't mean you, but the legislature, they kind of do it so casually. And that's
Yeah.
why the committees are so important, because it is a place where citizens have a chance to weigh in, and where they do a lot more vetting of the bill, because honestly, once it gets on the floor, you just get your people lined up, and people are so casual. They just pass things, in my opinion, way too easily, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, well, one of the gripes that I've had these last few months is an organization called the UEOC, which is the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, and nobody really knew what it was, other than those who helped to create it. And I said, well, this is the governor's office basically drafting legislation, and then it comes down to the committee, and we did the same. Not to, I'm looking around because I don't want to offend anybody, but we did the same thing here recently with this water bill, HB 211. It's got the stamp of the leadership on it. It's their bill, so it's one of those must-pass bills. But
Yep.
you look at it, and it's a UEOC 2.0. It's saying that the governor will basically pull all of his resources together on the executive side and draft a bunch of legislation, and then we know what's going to happen. That's going to come through the committees. It's going to get rubber stamped and approved because of who's behind it, not because of if it's a good bill or not. And it's really and there's so many. I've seen so much movement this session in that direction. There's so many places. If you go and anytime a new bill comes up, I just do a search on there for governor to see what powers we're giving the governor, and a lot of them have a lot of power that we've delegated to the governor's office as the legislature to draft legislation. It makes no sense to me, and it's really concerning.
You're so right. It makes no sense because the governor has executive powers. But and then what I have seen is what you're saying. I read these bills, and I'm like, the legislature is literally legislating their power over to the executive branch. I don't understand it. It blows my mind. And they're going, well, we can't pass this, or we have to pass this because the governor, this bill got killed because the governor doesn't like it. I'm like, why do we care what the governor wants? I mean, it's not even about a specific governor. It's not personal to the present governor. It's like the legislature should guard the legislative's power and not let the executive can weigh in, but they shouldn't be doing what the executive wants.
We have lanes, and we should respect those lanes. And the governor has a lane, and it's the executive branch, and the legislative branch shouldn't meddle in that. You know, we should pass laws and let the executive execute those laws. And instead, we've got the executive saying, hey, I think it'd be a good idea if I just, draft a bunch of the laws. When I say I mean, if that branch drafts the laws, one of the legislators stood up and said, we need to regulate this water at the schools because we're the experts and they're not. And it's like, but do they own the water? Is it their water rights? Well, yeah. Then it's like, then it's theirs. It's
Yes.
not for us to decide. They own it, they pay for it, but we know more than they do. And it's probably human nature to evolve into that space, which is exactly why we have a constitution that says that's the space that government shall not evolve into.
Right.
And so, yeah, people just they really need to refer back to that document. It's got to be like embedded in their soul that we are not going into that space, no matter how badly we want to, or even if people are begging us to do it.
And people are begging you to do it.
I know.
They are begging
Yeah.
you to do it, but we can't do it.
Yeah.
But that is the problem where people don't know the Constitution. They don't understand it. And they've been told that it's old and antiquated and we should get rid of it. But the principles in the Constitution, like we don't ever want to get rid of gravity. We don't want to
Right.
get rid of the sun or the moon. I mean, we don't like, oh, well, we should stop having the earth revolve around the sun. I mean, principles govern and they last for all of eternity. The Constitution is nothing more than a combination of principles brought together to lay a groundwork for freedom and prosperity. So, Phil, how is it that you know so much more about the Constitution than most legislators?
Well, it's important to me, and maybe there's one of my favorite statements, and I can't remember who said it, but he said, "When I see people running around waving the Constitution, it reminds me of a dog that's learned to carry its own leash in its mouth." And that's not being derogatory about the Constitution. It's like what created the Constitution was this idea that I'm a person. I have rights because I exist, and that's personhood and parenthood and statehood all derived from that. And sometimes you think people are experts in the Constitution without really understanding what the driving force of that was, which is that it's the same driving force that, created the Magna Carta long before the Constitution, of people saying, even if you're the king, I'm still a person and I have some rights. And that's what's enshrined in that Constitution. And somehow I really value that for myself. And I think most people do. If push comes to shove, they just get indoctrinated that someone else knows better for them how to live their lives, and then they delegate their beingness over to someone else. And we can't do that. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, we've started to trust the experts instead of ourselves.
Yeah, one thing that I think, when you get challenged on those things, and I have been challenged on that, when going to jail and a few things like that,
Yes.
really makes you look at those things. It is different. It is different when you're put into a tiny jail cell and they close the door. You change. You're never going to be the same person afterwards, and it's a really valuable experience. It's not something that I want to repeat or wish on anybody else, but it does change I don't know. Maybe there's something there. I think I'm by nature a nonconformist. My mom would agree with me that I'm a nonconformist.
You can't unlearn what you learned there.
A defiant person,
Well,
yeah.
But you know what? See, you're defiant against tyranny. You're not defiant against the rule of law. You're defiant against tyranny. And I know because I have that same natural spirit. I realized as a teenager, I can defy tyranny or I can defy God. And I'm only going to get myself in trouble defying God. And I really don't like, it's not the rules. It's I hate tyranny. It's not the rules I hate. It's the tyranny I hate.
Well, and to acknowledge that we are, God's offspring and that He is in charge of things. As I told a group yesterday, we get a little bit caught up in our own self-importance up here, not realizing that that God could fill the Great Salt Lake tomorrow with no problem at all. So all of the stuff that we do, and I just love what your take on that, because that's a big part of I guess knowing who we are is knowing who God is too, and what we are in relation to Him.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so Phil, how many bills were proposed this year?
I think there were on the list. I think we were approaching 1,500, and that would be a lot of them that didn't end up getting drafted. Right. And I'm not even sure. I haven't seen the count of whether we're at 900, on the board or what? Probably close to
943
900.
got numbered and
Oh, okay.
named and numbered.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the actually, but like you say, I know there was about 1,500 that's the number that I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there's motivation to do that. They tell us at the beginning, if you want your bills drafted, get them in early.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go in order, and that just says, all right, I guess it's a horse race for your bills. If you want to do it, you get them in early. So that's a process that could be, improved upon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I'd like to see us do less bills because I know trying to read all of those bills, it's not possible for me to, and it's not possible for any legislator to do it.
My solution to that, it might not be popular with everybody, is to provide more staff to the legislators. I don't want to go to a longer legislative session, but
great.
people don't realize. I get calls all the time, and they say, "Oh, I thought one of your staff would pick up." It's like, no, we don't have staff.
Right.
Each legislator is on his own to try to read the bills, draft the bills, create those things. And if you're in leadership, they have a few more staff at their disposal. But on the governor's side and the executive side, there are so many staff, and on the legislative side, there's no staff. So so the net result is there's no real coordination that could take place. And I'd love to see legislators have, a year-round staff member that could be coordinating with other legislator staff members. And I think we would come up with much better legislation. I think it'd be money well spent.
That is a really good point because, we see legislators present bills and you can tell they don't really know their bill that they're presenting very well because it was brought to them by someone else and they have a full-time job. They have a life and that's how we want it. We want them to. We don't want it to be different than that.
Yeah,
we definitely
exactly.
don't want it longer. Please, heaven help us. Never.
Well, and so you leave that space open, and it gets filled up either with the executive branch putting stuff forward, or corporation and lobbyists and external interests, and so all that space gets filled up with demands from people who are not coming from a legislative intent; they're really coming from their own intent. And
I agree with you 100% on that because they're not coming from a place of how do we protect freedom and how do we protect individuals. It's from a place of how do we get our agenda through the government. It's like the executive branch has an agenda and they want bills passed that give them more power. So,
right.
Okay. Do you have a specific bill that you would like to talk about?
Well, the last one that I've got coming through is HB 471, and I really love the bill because it deals with state jurisdiction. It's about roads. My first bill that I ran in the legislature was about roads, and this hopefully will make it through, and it would be my last bill, and it would kind of be two bookends. But the point on the roads right now, the special interest groups will come into a small county like mine, or any of them in my district. They're all small counties, and they'll just close roads, and it's usually the environmentalists that are using the BLM to close it.
Right.
And then the only recourse that the counties have is to bring a suit to the courts, and they'll go for decades trying to get that road back open. And in the meantime, if you go on that road, it's considered a trespass, at the extreme. And this just says that those roads belong to the states, they belong to the counties. The court says there's no other jurisdiction other than the state and the county when it comes to roads. Yet we've ceded that territory to the Bureau of Land Management, the administrative rulemaking side of that. And this just says, unless it's adjudicated in advance, the county will deem that road still open and available, and the state will. So, and it, like I say, it's about roads, but it really is about lanes and staying in our proper lanes, and the state at least having the backbone to say, these are our roads, and if you want to close it, go through the proper procedure. If the county wants to close it, they can go through the proper procedure, but you don't do it in advance and then make the person sue you to get it back.
Exactly. And that is one of those federalism bills that we were talking about earlier in the show, how important federalism is and how it is to understand it. Because we are allowing the federal government to come in and control our state, 67% of it. And these roads, they don't really have any constitutional authority, but leaders are letting them. So now they're doing it. And it's a great bill. I love that bill. So it's all the way through. It just needs to pass the Senate, right? So we could send a quick text or an email to senators. It's HB 471 state jurisdiction, and just ask them to be sure and support federalism, which they all say they're supporting. All of them are like, oh yes, we support federalism. This is a federalism bill. They need to all say, hey, just support our state and vote yes on HB 471.
It is interesting, and I'm sure you know this. In the last week or so, the House controls the Senate's calendar.
Yes, I do know.
It's not on the calendar now, so it's really the House leadership that will put that up and make sure that it gets heard. And if they don't, we'll bring it up in the interim. We'll push this one forward. But it's so timely. There's so many things happening right now all over the state with road closures that I think this is really a timely bill. So, but yeah, if you wanted to lobby for it, you'd probably be lobbying the House leadership to get that up on the calendar.
Because the House, it sounds weird, but the House decides the priority House bills that the Senate now will vote on. So the House has power over their own bills in the Senate. And and so the House gets to determine the priority. So you want to let leadership in the House know this is an important bill to us. We know that you as leadership support sovereignty and federalism. So please prioritize that. Don't let it slip through the cracks. And then we have to tell the senators to vote for it.
Yep.
And we have like 2 days really, because today, I don't know how late you guys are going to go, but probably late. 8 or 9.
We'll probably go late. We'll probably go late today, and then tomorrow. We got a lot of time. There's bills
plenty of time.
Through, so.
We need to tell them to prioritize because there's still a lot of bills. Representative Lyman, you are such a hero. Thank you so much for standing up, for defending our state. We really appreciate you. You're terrific, and I just want to be sure everyone knows that Representative Lyman is running for the governor. And we would be hard pressed. I can't think of anybody that I can think of in the entire world who would be a better governor for Utah than Phil Lyman. So he's going to need money. He's going to need volunteers. Delegates, go out, get elected to be a delegate. We already talked about that earlier in the show. Become a delegate. And you know what? We can take our state back. If we are willing to, if we're willing to do the groundwork, we can take our state back, and we can absolutely have a true statesman at the helm of this state. We have that opportunity. So I hope he'll support. I know you need to get back on the floor. Any last?
Well, I will say you're the hero, Dalane, and
no,
and always have been. And it is the people. This. If we could emphasize one thing, is that in a Republican form of government, it is the people's government. And if they're willing to step in and do more than just, vote once a year or once every 2 years, if they're willing to get involved like you're doing, they can really move the needle. So, yeah, you're the hero, and I appreciate all that you do, and I recognize it has a big sacrifice. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Likewise, thank you so much. And I will see you. I'll see you on the Hill in a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great one.
See you.
We'll be in touch.
Goodbye.
Okay. And I just want to remind you, you are the guardian of your liberty, and please do guardian your liberty. It's under attack. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.